are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the AVPN February webinar, FSG Inclusive Markets and its program to improve private preschool education. My name is Clive, and I'm the membership manager at the Asian Venture Philanthropy Network. AVPN is a unique founders network based in Singapore, committed to building a vibrant and high-impact philanthropy and social investment community across Asia. Today, we're very pleased to have Vikram and Vinesh from FSG to share their insights on the early childhood education from its multi-year research program to improve private preschool education, also known as PIPE. Before we proceed, a few housekeeping instructions. We will not take any questions from Vikram and Vinesh's presentation, but we'll open up the floor for Q&A after that. Please feel free to use the console to type in your questions during the webinar, and I will raise the questions to our speakers after their presentation. If you have further questions that are not answered by the end of the webinar, you can email us at membership@avpn.asia. Without further ado, I will now hand over the presentation to Vikram. Vikram?
Yes. Thank you, Clive. Hello, everyone. Thank you, AVPN, for offering me the opportunity to present our work at this forum. In the next 40 minutes, I plan to share our findings and our experience on the ground trying to improve the quality of affordable private schools in urban India. I hope you find it useful and informative. My colleague Vignesh and I would be happy to answer your questions towards the end, as Clive suggested. Let me start by introducing myself. I am Vikram Jain, a director at FSG's Mumbai office. To share a little bit of my background, I started my career as a software engineer and really enjoyed developing software, and through which I also got to travel quite a bit around the world helping telecom clients. My whole role was how could I improve the service delivery, and I really enjoyed that. I decided it would be great if I could also help the organizations in growing and scaling, and therefore decided to do an MBA and become a management consultant. Was fortunate to get admission into London Business School, and later I landed a job at McKinsey London. I learned a lot at McKinsey. It was a great organization and also helped me understand some of the challenges and decision making that goes behind in helping organizations to scale up. But overall, adding a few $1 million to an investment bank's bottom line wasn't very exciting for me. So my wife and I at that time decided, also for personal reasons, to move back to Mumbai, and I thought this was a great opportunity to do something more meaningful for me. So I was fortunate to find a company. In those days we were called Monitor Inclusive Markets, that was helping businesses on working on socially relevant topics to scale. Most businesses or industries start by serving the rich and then slowly move down as their operations scale up and their efficiencies improve. Classic examples are telecom companies or consumer good companies. They're able to do this because they have an infrastructure that they've already built. They innovate at the ends, for example, small packets for consumer goods or prepaid SIM cards for telecom sector to serve essentially the poor. But how do you do this for education? Do you expect poor kids to attend schools at night? How many industries are we aware of that are serving the poor only? Maybe microfinance. Can we think of others? At FSG Inclusive Markets, we believe that markets can and should benefit the poor. So we wish to leverage our understanding of businesses and helping companies to scale that are working in sectors which serve the poor directly. We are a mission-driven organization and our parent is a non-profit headquartered in Boston. Everything, all the material, including whatever your presentations, etc. you're seeing today, we produce is open source and is in the public domain. At around 2014, the Monitor Inclusive Markets team moved to FSG, which was, we thought, a better home for us, and now we are called FSG Inclusive Markets, just to connect the history. So our work is split across two parts. We do a lot of research to come up with new ideas, and at the same time we get entrepreneurs to adopt these ideas and start businesses that will scale. So it's not just research, but we also believe in taking our research to action and seeing impact on the ground. We consider success only when our entrepreneur partners have achieved scale and are serving thousands of customers profitably. We work in three domains: housing, clean drinking water, and early childhood education, which I'll speak about a little more. But just while we are on this, in housing, which has been one of the programs started in 2008, we've managed to get entrepreneurs to build 80,000 low-income houses. That is, houses costing less than INR, Indian rupees 10 lakhs, or US dollars about 15,000. We've also supported the creation of a housing finance for low-income informal sector. Customers, by informal sector I mean customers that don't have income proof, like your street vegetable vendor or a chaiwala on the street. So these customers 10 years ago were not being served housing finance, which typically runs into 15 or 20 years. Today we have in India 10 housing finance companies serving them, and in 2013, when we had last surveyed them, over $160 million was given at housing finance loans. I believe the number or the amount is easily double that today. Average ticket size of this loan is about $8,000, and the tenure is typically between 15 and 20 years. So this industry, we feel, is on its way to scale. I'll switch to share more about our early childhood education program. So this is a photo of Ganesh, who works as a peon or operations helper in our office. At a recent, at an offsite, he got his 5-year-old son to come to our office, and he was extremely proud to say that his son was going to an English medium school. His dream was to get his son an office job. I mean, I could almost sense that something which he had aspired for but could not get. He was excited, and he asked his son to count for us 1 to 100 or recite the poem Jack and Jill, and I was fairly impressed. And I began talking to the child, and at one point I asked the child to give me 6 pens from a pen stand on my table, and the kid just walked over, picked up the entire bunch and gave it to me. We thought that was a bit odd, and so we asked him to do again, but to the same effect. At that point, Ganesh, the look on Ganesh's face was devastating. I mean, his jaw literally dropped, and he realized that his kid could not count. While the kid was able to, rote say 1 to 100, he could not count pens or beads or anything. And at the same time, he was telling us that, look, he was spending about 1,000 rupees or $15 every month to send his child to an affordable private school so that he could get good education. His wife was also a stay-at-home mom so that she could ensure that the children were being sent to school on time, their homework was done, etc. So I could sense at that moment a little bit of helplessness on Ganesh's part in trying to improve his child's education. And this is what we really want to do. We want to help the working poor achieve their dream of getting quality education for their children. Unfortunately, most children in affordable private schools are not school ready. And the key reason for that is they are being taught using developmentally inappropriate pedagogy. It's the same pedagogy which is used in primary, which is a teacher standing down and talking to children and the kids being told ABCD 1, 2, 3 every day, whereas not really being able to understand the concepts. So we did some research. We interviewed about 480 children and we found that 35% of the kids entering grade 1 could not identify numbers, about just till 20. 54% of the kids could not count up to 20 objects, and 30% of the kids could not do very simple single digit additions. Also on the English front, the learning outcomes weren't impressive. 49% of the kids could not read simple three-letter words. So most kids in these schools can read bat and cat because the classic textbooks have B for bat and C for cat. But when you put the same word like SAT, they will not be able to read it. And that, unfortunately, because of the poor learning background or the poor baseline that's been set up, the learning outcomes of these children, even in the later years, is quite poor. So education initiatives has assessed thousands of kids across sectors, not just government schools, but also private schools, not just affordable private schools, but also mid-income schools. And they find that, 35% of the kids are only able to read at grade 4 level, and this is, we're talking of kids in grade 10. Only 25% can place the number sequence on screen, which is 2.03, 2.5 and 2.07 in the correct order on a multiple choice question. Even ASR data shows that most kids in grade 5 are able to read only at grade 2 levels. As the Nobel laureate James Heckman has said, it is absolutely critical that for the child to have a right foundation for him to be able to succeed in life later. Also in terms of investments, the biggest return on investments is in the early years, and especially for education it would be in preschool programs. So with this in mind, we decided to see if there was a market-based opportunity to improve the early childhood education amongst urban parents or children in urban India. So as with everything, we first started by understanding what the customer wants, because for a market-based solution, we needed to make sure that the customers was willing to pay and there was a demand for such a product. So we interviewed 4,300 families in 8 cities in urban India along broad dimensions as to what they believed about early childhood education, what motivated the parents about getting their children into early childhood education, how are they evaluating options, what was the after purchase, how would they make sure that what they selected was right, how are they interacting with their the service provider. So typically what you would do with any consumer product, we used a whole broad range of questions and understood this or ran this with 4,300 parents. I'll just share some findings. So firstly, 90.3% of families were sending their children to early childhood education. And this survey, I just want to emphasize again that 4,300 parents that we interviewed were in the income bracket of 8 to 25,000 monthly household income, which typically in World Bank parlance comes to somewhere around $2 to $5 per day. So people who are, I would call the working poor, just about poverty line. So amongst this segment, 90% were sending their children to ECE, and amongst those that were going to ECE, 90% were going to the private sector. So the dominant provider was the private sector, and to some extent ECE has become a norm in India. Again, just to clarify, so by ECE we mean grades the 2 or 3 years before the first standard. So typically they are called nursery and KG in India, or sometimes they are called lower KG and upper KG in India. So what motivated parents to send their children? And most parents said that it was actually giving the child a solid foundation was the key reason for them to send their children. It wasn't that, because there was a hypothesis that perhaps they're sending their children because they wanted daycare, but that wasn't the case. They wanted to set their child up for success, make sure that he is able to get into the right habits of going into school, he's able to stay away from mommy. That was the perspective. And what is good ECE? So most people, including Ganesh, would say that good ECE is, when my child gets regular homework, there are some exams done, and Ganesh was even spending some money sending his kids to tuitions after school. 98% of parents wanted their children to be given homework every day. And 90% of the kids were getting homework every day. So in some ways the market was responding to exactly what the parents wanted. 84% of 2-year-old children were being regularly assessed, and by that I mean were being assessed more than once in 6 months. And frankly, when we asked parents how satisfied they were, on multiple dimensions, the satisfaction levels were fantastic. I mean, you don't find these in my private sector consulting life. I've not seen these satisfaction levels for any product. And the key reason for that is, having made the choice, the schools were providing exactly what the parents wanted, whether it was developmentally appropriate or not. So the parents wanted that my child learn ABC, and every day the kid was being taught ABC. The parents wanted my child knows 1 to 100, and that was what was being rote taught. I mean, in how Ganesh mentioned, it was literally like, this is what he thought was good, exactly that's what he was good, and then there was a report card which was flashing that his child was getting an A+ in everything. So there isn't any objective evaluation. I mean, the report cards are obviously overinflating what the child has learned, but for the common man, that's as good a proxy of what the education is. So he was extremely thrilled with the provider's quality. When we then assessed as to where they were sending their children for early childhood education, we found out that even as low as 3-year-olds, 70% of the children were getting early childhood education, which was part of a bigger school, or as we call an affordable private school. So affordable private schools, which typically start at grade 1, have started going lower and lower and picking up kids in what we now call in India nursery, which is age 3+, junior KG age 4+, and senior KG age 5+. And from the parents' perspective, when we asked Ganesh, why are you sending your child to an affordable private school? His response was, look, I spoke to the principal in our neighborhood, and they said that, look, if you want to send your child to our school, it is best to come in early, because otherwise I'm not sure if there's any seat available. And when we interviewed owners, what we found was that the reason they were going down was not because they just wanted a little bit more money, but because it was competitive pressure. All these affordable private schools are operating in a local micro market. And if one child goes to a competing school at an earlier grade, then there are only so many children left for me to fish from when my batch opens in grade 1. So for that reason, most schools are starting to go lower so as to get the catchment of children near their school. Which for us meant that we now had to improve the quality of education in an affordable private school. And just to give a sense, I mean, an affordable private school, unlike most in the developed world, is actually running at a much lower price point than the government school. As an expert put it, they are able to deliver education at 1/5 the price that a government school gives. The infrastructure is often quite poor. These are sometimes run out of houses right next to one another. I've rarely seen any open grounds. They're often in bastis where these families stay. But at least the owner and the teachers are available. So we asked Ganesh, like, why don't you send your child to a government school? And Ganesh said, I don't want to send my child there because A, teachers don't show up in government school, and B, at least at the private school, I have access to the owner or the principal whom I can ask about my child's education, whereas if I send it to government schools, they're not responsive at all. So we then try to understand what motivates an owner of an affordable private school. And this is a classic affordable private school owner. Typically, they are a small businessman. They are looking to differentiate and grow their business, but often they don't even have an education background. The wife may be acting as the principal. They are basically trying to maximize the real estate that they have in a basti, and an affordable private school is a fairly good business. Interestingly, most owners also may be running other businesses in parallel. The motivation for him clearly is financial, and there is perhaps a slight other aspect about, there is some sort of a value you get when you are in a community where you are an owner of an APS, but predominantly the primary driver is financial. So for us to be able to, there are about 150,000 affordable private schools in urban India, and for us to be able to transform them, we said that we need to find products which would be pedagogically appropriate, at the same time would appeal to an owner who's frankly not interested about quality, but at least he can signal differentiation. So we scanned the Indian market to see were there products which were suitable for the affordable private school market and could improve the learning outcomes of children there. At the same time could signal to the owner that this would differentiate his school from the other schools in the micro market, because in the end it's a very competitive micro market. And from there we identified 6 organizations who have a good product and at the same time have a keen interest in serving the affordable private school market. Interestingly, the pedagogy is not that complicated, because frankly what you need at an early level are teaching learning materials and activities that the child plays with so that the child learns through that, rather than a much more rote-based approach which is currently happening today in India. So our theory of change is basically, if we can get high quality service providers to sell to affordable private schools, then through them we'll be able to improve the learning outcomes of children. At some point we also have to educate the parents on asking for the right things, because otherwise the demand for these products will never be there. And one of the ways in which we are doing that is through visible markers. For example, we can't educate the parent on what is pedagogically appropriate at age 5, but we can tell the parent that instead of checking whether your child can count 1 to 100, Can you check if your child knows whether 18 is bigger or 22 is bigger? Can you check whether your child can read new 3-letter words? Can you check if your child can count, as in give him a bunch of beads and can he count those beads, or give him a bunch of beans and can he, the child, count beans? And interestingly, none of these things can be taught using the rote based of teaching. So for the school owner to be able to deliver on these, he would have to select a pedagogically appropriate way of teaching. So if the parents can be educated on these markers through the affordable private school, it works, because for the affordable private school also it becomes very interesting to say that, look, we just don't teach by rote, we also actually teach our children concepts. And look, our kids are able to count, but you check with your neighbor's kid, they'll never be able to count. And that spreads word of mouth marketing in the Basti where this affordable private school is operating. So we are developing ways for our partners or product companies to actually serve affordable private schools and also educate them on markers which they can then circulate amongst parents. Again, these have to be simple things that a parent intuitively gets it, and not something where there's a lot of concept understanding required. So in the end, the aim is for these companies or our partners to reach thousands of schools, and through them we should hopefully be able to create a lot of impact. Our goal by 2021 is to have 200,000 children annually and sustainably doing improved learning outcomes, having 5 or 7 companies that have high quality products and are serving the affordable private school market on the way to scale, and a large bunch of parents demanding good preschooling. So what this would mean actually, and there are a few things which are not today working in the market. So firstly, when you go and speak to these companies, most of them have no interest in serving the APS market. And typically the conversation would be, the CEO would tell you that, look, these APS owners are not interested in a quality product. All they want to differentiate is using physical hardware. So you'll have these computer labs or signs of smart boards outside the school, but they would never say that our quality of education is better, or rather everyone would say that, but they can't differentiate. We want to change that to having these same companies serving thousands of APSs. Today parents are using poor markers. We want them to at least use one good marker. Today affordable private schools are differentiating on infrastructure. We want them to differentiate on learnings and also educating the parents on what the different learning is. And finally, in terms of the ecosystem, today the business model for serving the affordable private school space is, there are parts of it which are not very challenging, and it's a clear business model is not available, which is what we are developing and helping and piloting with our partners, so that tomorrow they have a means to grow and scale. At the same time, we don't have tools which are appropriate to make sure that the interventions we are supporting are even leading to impact. So we have taken IDELA, which is a tool developed by Save the Children, to actually refine that tool so that there's a standard way to make sure that the learning outcomes of children entering grade 1 is also improving over time. I'm just going to touch upon how are we supporting our partners. So if you think about the affordable privates, the service providers serving affordable private schools, they have challenges within the organization itself, but at the same time, there are ecosystem barriers which they need to overcome. For example, APS owners are only looking for financially returns, so that they are not interested in quality. Parents are demanding bad education. The government policy may or may not be conducive. So how do you help a partner overcome these? So some of these we try to fix, and within the firm there are some barriers that we try to address. So for example, if we find that the APS team, the leadership team in an organization is not convinced about the APS market, then essentially we share the potential, we show them the economics of how you can serve this market. We have actually gone and pitched products. So when they said that we can't sell in this market, we've gone and said, okay, we will sell for you. And we've gone and sold 8 products with their sales team so that they can see, okay, this is how you can sell in this market. We've shared with them leads so that it makes it easier. We've tried to get partnerships going so that they are able to get access to a larger number of schools. Sometimes we even grant funded a player to say, why don't you also experiment in one more geography, and at times given a little bit of discount on their product so that the schools can adopt. And all of this so that, once the product is rolled out, they also get a sense of what this market is, how does the affordable school work, how do you even roll out at a quality product, and hopefully they see the potential and then in the future scale up. We are right now in the pilot phase. This is a 5-year program. The foundational phase was a lot of research, which some of pieces I shared with you. Others are available on our website to download for free. We're right now in the pilot phase where we are piloting interventions on how to scale this market, how do you deliver effectively in this market, and helping our partners approach this market more systematically. In terms of our co-funders, UBS, Children's Investment Fund Foundation, Central Square Foundation, Marshall Foundation, the World Bank has given us a little bit of money, and Omidyar has given us some money. So those are our key sponsors. In terms of the team, we are a team of 20 individuals across a range of backgrounds. Some have, consulting management skills. Some of them are EC experts. We have operational experts. We have teachers. We also have trainers who know how to train these teachers so that the effective interventions are rolled out through our partners. That's it really.
Okay, thank you very much, Vikram. So I would like to remind the audience to ask your questions from the council. So we do have a few questions coming up already. So Vikram, so one audience noticed that on the slides of the providers of early childhood education, so 90% of them come from private and only 10% are offered by the government. So the question is why there's such a big difference, and what is the difference between the private and the government early childhood education providers?
Sure. So there is a perception in India that the quality of the government schools in terms of early child education is very poor. So most low-income families send their children to affordable private schools. And mind you, these schools, unlike the developed world, are not expensive. They are typically a low-income family would be spending about 15% of their monthly household income to educate their 2 children. So about 7% per child, which is a stretch, but still affordable. But the perception is that if I send my child to a government school, A, the teachers don't show up over there, and B, I have no say because I'm not a customer. So even if I have, if I want to know about how my child is doing, etc., I have to take what is given as opposed to being able to ask the question. So the working poor do want a quality service for their money and therefore are much more interested in sending their children to affordable private schools. And by the way, this is fairly consistent with developing world. In fact, the other day I saw a World Bank study which also said across most of the Africa and South Asia, in a lot of these countries, there's a shift from the government provision to private sector provision in schools. I also want to emphasize that this data is only urban data. In rural, the government numbers would be much higher than 10%.
Great. So there's another question from Prashant. So Prashant wanted to know, can you share some light on how many schools you have reached in the pilot phase of the pipe, and how are the schools taking up?
Sure. So last year, because our partners were not convinced there's an opportunity, our team literally went out and sold these products in these bastis. And we started this in March of last year. And basically the selling period in schools, because the new calendar year starts in June, so we literally had a month or two. We managed to close 60 sales in 40 schools. So our current pilot this year is running in 40 schools, and this year our partners, so this year what we have done is we have educated or trained our partners to sell in the affordable school market, and we are not going and selling. So this year, let's see how many they're able to sell. My expectation is that by April 2017, our partners would have sold the products in 130 affordable private schools.
So there's another question from Nina. So Nina is asking, in what way do you consult social companies? So I guess it's social company means social enterprises that are creating products for the early childhood education sector. Can you give an example on that?
Sure. We frankly, we are supporting our partners. So firstly, we are not providing a consulting service. For us, like I said, the impact is when our partners are able to deliver better learning outcomes for children. Our aim is to get 200,000 children improved learning outcomes every year and growing. So if there is a social enterprise that wants to serve the affordable private school market and wants to serve our target customer and has the potential to scale in the next 5 years to serve thousands of schools, then we would partner with them tomorrow morning and we would help them in addressing this market. And the ways we would help them is, one, first we would tell them how to sell in this market. We would tell them, we'll share with them leads of schools in this market. We would help them in understanding how do you price in this market, because often it's not a cost plus pricing. You need to see where does the customer see value, and therefore how you should price your product in this market. We would help them with better implementation of the product, tracking the implementation, seeing how much of what they had planned is going per plan, and therefore what is the impact in the end on the learning outcomes of children. So all of these phases we would help our partners, and often we do not charge our partners. So we're doing this so that the partners are able to create impact for which our funders are giving us money.
There's another question from Amanda. So Amanda touched upon the issue of corruption. So she wanted to ask whether you have seen, the corruption issues also happened in the ECE sector, and do you see there are any measures taken to make sure, the corruption is eliminated in the schools?
I'm not sure what corruption we are talking about. So like these are private schools. The parents are sending their children to private schools because they expect better education here. The parents are paying a fee, like I pay a fee to send my child to a private school. And the school is trying its best to give as good an education as possible. So it's a complete client service kind of a setup. I'm not sure. The school may have to interact with government and it may have to interact with corruption, but per se on a customer basis, this is purely a client service role.
Okay, great. So there's another question from Prania. So the question is, are you looking for early years teacher training programs which can be scaled for improving the quality of learning and development in these APS?
Very good question. It's interesting. So per se, the affordable private school owner does not want to pay for teacher training. And the reason is very simple. In this market, there is a teacher attrition of 40%. Today, I'm going to train my teachers. Tomorrow, they're going to leave. So what's the point in training them? What we are doing is actually saying, to some extent, use these products. And for your teacher to be able to use these products, our partners are giving the teachers the training. But the hook is the product. If you go and tell a school, we'll give you pure teacher training, the school would be, look, I'm already running my school anyway. It's going to be the same teacher. So the value from teacher training is not perceived in the owner's mind, and he will not pay for such a service. Whereas for our partner products, they are willing to pay. Because the partner products are typically focused on English and math, which is exactly what the customer wants. So our partners are saying that this is how you can do a better English, especially for families which don't have that as the, it's not spoken at home.
Thank you, Vikram. Another question is from Malaysia. So can you elaborate what is the product that APS is selling? Just the pedagogy or the brand also? Is it a kind of franchise model?
So the affordable private school is just a school in a small basti which is providing education for which the customers are paying. I think perhaps the question was, what do our partners sell? So I'll give an example. One of our partners is selling an English language product, and the way their approach is that, look, the way you learn a language is using a mother tongue approach. My mother never told me that, milk started with M, whereas, as I was growing up, she told me, like, drink the milk quickly, otherwise you'll miss your bus. And through that long statement, I kind of figured out what is milk. I looked at her expression and kind of figured out that there's a sense of urgency to it, and that's how I picked up my language. So what they do is they introduce the same environment in the classroom and expose the child to converse to each other in that language, because it's a new language for these children. These children at home are perhaps speaking Hindi, Urdu or Marathi, whereas now they're speaking English in this classroom, and they're also being told stories, etc. in English through which they learn the language. So the product partners are companies which have these innovative products which we feel would lead to better learning outcomes, and therefore we're helping them scale in the APS market.
Yeah, so the next question is related to the point you just made. So the question from Nina, how do you assess the educational quality of the products that you are trying to help to the APS promote?
Through two ways. Yeah, through two ways. Again, a good question. The first way is that we have a person on our team who's an EC expert. She's a PhD from University of Pennsylvania, and she has rolled out Akanksha, which is one of the good NGOs rolling out ECE in India. So she's rolled out the ECE program at Akanksha. So she knows how this market is and how do parents, how educated the parents are. So she first goes and looks at the overall curriculum, pedagogy, and the approach to delivery and says, yeah, this broadly smells right. We then go and do a dipstick assessment in some of the existing schools where the partner is running to get us to make sure that actually the learning outcomes in those schools are better than what we have seen in other private schools. And then we form a rough understanding that, okay, this perhaps is a partner organization that we should work with. But the real proof of the puzzle is when we do large-scale children assessment, and that we are doing by first year when the children enter grade 1, we assess them, and next year after 1 year of intervention, we assess the next batch of children coming in, and only if we see an improvement will we know whether the actual product leads to development outcomes or not. So to date, it's just based on expert input and a dipstick assessment. Coming in July, we'll have the first large scale, because these products have been rolled out in APS only for a year. We'll have the first large scale children assessment to see whether the children which have gone through 1 year intervention actually show better outcomes or not.
Thank you, Vikram. So the next question is on the implementation of the products. So the products are good. So how can you ensure that the teachers and the leaders in the APS schools are able to implement those products into their curriculum?
Again, a very good question. And in fact, if anything, the biggest learning from the first year pilot has been that the implementation is quite poor. What we heard the product or the CEO talk about the product in the boardroom is very different from what is happening in the classroom. And the reason is very simple. While fundamentally the product is good, when that product is kind of, when the CEO delivers that to his head trainer, there's a loss of transmission. Then that head trainer is talking to his on-the-ground trainers who again lose 10% of what was originally the intention. Then those trainers are going and teaching or training the teachers in the affordable private school, and again 20 or 30% is lost. And then after you have even trained the teacher, there's a 40% attrition. There's a high chance that, you know, a good 10% of those teachers who are trained replace and new teachers come in who are continuing with the product without any training. So there are a lot of these issues, and we are now systematically seeing how we can prevent in bridging or plugging the holes in this system so that the implementation is as close to the boardroom talk. So we want to get the classroom as close to the boardroom as possible.
Yeah, so there's a question, thank you Vikram, there's a question on the PIPE program. So on this slide, it says from 2019 to 2021 is the transition to scale. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this phase?
Sure. So in the current phase, we are right now looking at, are the product partners even creating impact? Can we help them in implementing exactly the issues that we said? How can we improve their implementation? They don't know how to sell in this market. Often the approach that is used in the high end does not work in this market. So even how to sell, how to create a business. So all of those metrics are being piloted in the next year or two. After that, what we are hoping is we would have published all these findings on our website, so the partners would become far more comfortable and would have finessed the business model and the product rollout. So then they would be at a stage where perhaps what they need is capital investment, etc., and they'll be on their way to scaling. Where our efforts with them reduce or are basically dipstick assessments to make sure, you know, things are going per plan. So in that scale, what we are seeing is that our partners have already reached 200, 300 affordable private schools each, and are basically from then on seeing this as a great business opportunity, because there are 150,000 affordable private schools in India, and the number is increasing every year. And so therefore they see this as a business opportunity and start to address this.
Great. So there's a question on the alignment of the products with existing curriculum, because so we assume that those APS will already have an existing curriculum. So how do the new products align with the existing curriculum from the APS?
Yes, so the products are aligned. I mean, our partners are also, mind you, selling in the middle and high income, where also they have a defined curriculum. So in some ways the curriculum is designed, or the product is designed such that it is part of the state prescribed curriculum. These are essentially like one or two, like in the example I gave, maybe 2 additional classes where the child is immersed, but at the same time, thankfully, in the early years, the curriculum prescription from the government is not that strong. But anyway, where the schools say that, look, we want to follow this particular board or that particular board, the partners actually supplement this with these additional. I mean, the idea is at the end, can you do these activities and teach them counting? So you do want to teach the child how to count, but rather than using, writing on board 1 + 1 = 2, just so like, look, if this guy gave you 1 stick and this guy gave you one more stick, how many sticks do you have? Or using dice or using some other mechanisms or activities to basically teach kids.
Okay, Vikram, I think we have one last question for you. So the question is about FSG's role in those APS. So one part you have mentioned is you will recommend and promote the products to the APS schools, but you also mentioned, in those schools, sometimes the teacher quality is very bad and attrition rate is very high. So will FSG also play a role in helping the schools selecting teachers and train the teachers?
No. FSG's role in the schools is basically as a learning ground. So as our partners roll out the products, we are with the schools. In fact, for some schools, we have given them a little bit of money to help us to come and do research on the products. But we want to be in schools to learn how the product is being taken by the teacher. Is it adding to the teacher's burden? Are there learning outcomes? Are the children learning better compared to what they were doing earlier? How motivated is the owner in engaging on this new product that he's bought in the school? How are parents perceiving it? Because if the parents don't see any change in the learning outcomes, they are not going to necessarily, because in the end they have to pay one way or the other. If the school is buying a product which is going to cost, let's say, $15 per annum per child, in the end it is going to be passed on to the parents. The parent also needs to be made aware that there is this product which is leading to these better learning outcomes. So we are in schools to understand all this, and then the way we act is through our partners. So we then give this information back to the partners to say, this is how you should therefore run the parent-teacher meeting or the orientation within the APS, so that the APS owner is better informed and the parents are also better informed. So our role is always to learn from the on-the-ground presence, but in the way we want to act through our partners, because that's the only way that the opportunity will scale. I mean, in the end, this market should work without FSG being there after 5 years. Because if the partners are seeing enough value are making money from the affordable private schools, they'll continue to serve them, and they don't need, hopefully, FSG's help then in the future.
Okay.
Just to add two more things, given this was the last question. So one, we are looking for people. So if someone has CVs for a program manager for the PIPE program, we would love for you to forward them to us. And second, we are also looking for funding. So if there are interested stakeholders, or if you feel there are other people who might be interested in improving the learning outcomes for children of the working poor in urban India, then do let us know.
Yes, so for the audience, if you are interested to know more about the program, please feel free to reach out to us or reach out to Vikram directly for more information. So I think we have reached the end of the webinar. Thank you everyone for this very interesting session. And thank you very much, Vikram, for sharing the insights. We will post the webinar recording on our website by end of next week, so please look out for that. And there will also be education panels in our annual conference in June in Bangkok. So please check out our conference website at 2017.avpn.asia. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Vikram.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.